Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders not selected as Pope, and Mel Kiper is disappointed.
He was all over the coverage. I mean, Todd.
Right. Talking about a great Pope from Chicago, not a Cubs fan. He's a White Sox fan. Yeah.
Yeah, no wonder why the Pope wanted to get out of Chicago. He's following the White Sox.
I know, right?
Although they're not the worst team in baseball because the Rockies are worse.
Oh, the Rockies. Oof. They started out like 4-24 or something.
They're like 6-31 or something like that.
Good Lord. That's a shame. My son lives out there, and I've been to Coors Field several times. It is legitimately one of the most aesthetically pleasing ballparks you will ever watch a game in. Like, it's just, the weather is typically perfect. The sight lines, it's just a nice stadium. And they draw fans. It's not like people don't come to the games because it's kind of like what Chicago used to be. It's just a thing to do. But their owners they just stink. They don't try to put anything in the product.
No, and they're in a really tough division now. You got the Dodgers, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Giants. I mean, they're all spending money, investing, and are good teams.
But I don't know why Colorado doesn't, because it's a big sports market, and like I said, I think they could draw really well if they would attempt to put a product on the field. But
the thing is, they do draw pretty well, considering that their product is really bad.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think there's any motivation to spend money on the product, because they're already making money. I mean, it's insane. It's such a nice ballpark. It's such there's lots of breezeways and places to watch the game. Walking around, having a beer or drink in the outfield. It's just really pretty with the Rocky Mountains in the background. I mean, geez. But anyway. Enough of that.
The White Sox are 10-28.
Yeah,
they're 3.5 games ahead of the Rockies.
God, when the White Sox think you're bad. Yeah, but how about the Pope, man? From Chicago, first U.S. Pope ever in centuries, right?
What did I see? Some meme that says, "Oh, the tariffs are really working. The Pope's now American."
Well, we know he hates the Cardinals if he's from Chicago.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, American Pope. Sounds like a movie, doesn't it? The American Pope.
Well, I saw a meme that also had a picture of him, Chicago Hope, Tuesday nights on NBC.
Chicago Pope. I love it. It's great. Yeah. There was some Cubs stuff. Oh, the one guy had a meme where they did an introduction like with the Bulls,
Mm-hmm.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. It was like Michael Jordan's Bulls when he was coming out.
I've seen Jordan's, in the glass, the stained glass windows in the churches, like
exactly
Jordan there.
It's great.
Going up in Vatican City.
Hey, man, at least it's a news story. It's pretty interesting. And an American Pope. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, after 2,000 years, finally.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Granted, America's only been around 150, but or 250. But
we're so young that other countries look like stupid Americans. You're so young, but yeah, got our first Pope, so that's cool. All right, not cool was what the Tampa Bay Rays did again at Steinbrenner Field, where they have no chance of winning. Apparently, they took a 5-1 lead into the 8th inning over the Phillies, and they had a chance, to salvage a game out of this series. Instead, in the 8th inning, 3-run homer by Bryson Stott off Edwin Uceta, and then you had another rally, in the 9th. And Pete Fairbanks, I thought it was a bad throw, but it was probably a worse catch at first base. I think they moved Junior Caminero over there, and he just kind of
for defensive purposes, they put Brendan Lau at second.
Yeah, he boxed one on a pickoff.
They moved players all over the place, and Caminero ended up at first.
Right, it wasn't good, and he boxed one, and then Jonathan Rojas advanced all the way to third on the pickoff throw. And he scores on an infield ground out. And then, they wind up getting a couple runs in the 10th. Rays got one back, and that was all she wrote. So 11 losses in their last 12 games at Steinbrenner Field. How soon can they put the roof on the Trop? Goodness.
Well, it sounds like at least not till opening day next year. So
yeah,
you're stuck with Steinbrenner this year.
Not going to be soon enough.
Or can we still play half the season in Montreal? Can we go there for the summer?
I think something, man. It's a house of horrors is what it is. Maybe they should have gone to Clearwater. Wasn't that whole thing that the Pinellas County Commission was worried about or upset about?
Yeah, although there was, I mean, it sounded like a great plan, Clearwater, but I believe there was too many logistical hurdles.
Yeah.
Steinbrenner was more MLB ready. I also think, the Tarpons drew 700 to 800 fans a game, where the Threshers are close to 3,000. So if you're kicking them out of their stadium, where are you going to play, where you're going to still pull in the gate?
Yeah.
The Tarpons are playing on, now the side fields are, over by the offices south of Ray J, I believe.
Right.
And they put bleachers there because they don't get that many fans per game. Where the Threshers have a much bigger audience. So it was a lot of, and there's probably other logistical reasons too, but.
Well, I just think Steinbrenner, to your point, was more major league ready. If you're going to play regular season games, they had just redone the whole clubhouse, and it is in
seats
Tampa
more as well too. So it was more attendance and
they've had virtual sellouts every game except maybe one.
Yeah, they've announced a sellout for 24 of the 25 games or whatever it is that they played.
But man, they just can't. They can't win. Cannot win there. It's the weirdest thing. It's like whatever it takes. They swung the bats a little bit better. Didn't play great defense, and next thing you know, they give up the big fly, and ball was really carrying out of there. To right field and right center, like we thought it would, but it finally did. I don't know. Listen, it's not a great team. I think we're far enough down the road that we know that no surprise, this team will struggle offensively, and especially against left-handers. Left-handers are going to eat them alive. Their right-handed bats are weaker. They did play Jonathan Aranda and I think Brendan Lau, but even so, those are bad matchups. I think Aranda was like 3 of 18 against left-handers coming into the game. So, as Kevin Cash said, it's just we're a little out of sync. A little out of sync on offense right now. And if they don't just pitch lights out, this is what happens. But you got to close it out in the 8th inning when you're up 5-1. You just do. You cannot lose that game. That's a gift and a sweep.
Not when you're struggling at home. I mean, that's when you got to lock it down and get that win.
And struggling to score runs, and you're up 5-1. They fell behind again 1-0. They fall behind every game, usually in the first inning. And this one, you're up 5-1. You can't lose 7-6 in extras. So I feel for Cash. I feel for those guys. I think the players are doing the best they can, but it's not a real overly talented group, and they're scuffling. And I think they probably at this point feel a little bit cursed at Steinbrenner. Like after a while, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you start looking at those numbers and you go, wow, 10 out of 11, 11 out of 12, we can't win here. Then that sort of creeps into everybody's consciousness, and by God, you don't win there. So somebody needs to break the curse. I don't know how you do that, but it's not going well. Not the way they expected anyway. We got some stuff to talk about. The Bucs are going to begin their rookie minicamp over at One Buck Place today, and they will be there on Saturday as well. Lots of rookies to look at. Of course, the guys they drafted. It's kind of a cattle call, but also the undrafted free agents, which we will talk about. But first, make sure you guys get on down to Breitling Boutique. That is at International Plaza Mall. We've been talking about it for a while. They are our sponsors. It is one of the great switch watchmakers in the world. The Breitling Company has been in business for over 140-something years, almost 145 years. They've been at International Plaza for the last 5+ years. Now, you go to the center of the mall, go upstairs, you're going to find a beautiful store, but more importantly, tremendous customer service. Go in there, have a drink, find out about their beautiful watches, the chronomats, the Navitimers for the men, and also women's watches, sports watches for your wife, for your girlfriend. These things are durable. You can bang them around a little bit. They still look beautiful, and they have all the different colored wristbands that she would love. And right now, still while supplies last, you can get one of the 32 NFL team watches. They're celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary. These watches are really special. They got the the team colors in the face of the chronomat watch, and then the logo. If you go on TampaBay.com, you're likely to see the Buccaneers team watch. Again, while supplies last, there are 32 team watches, and very few remain, but check them out anyway. Maybe you can find your favorite team. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure you let them know that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, we got some mailbag questions to get to here in a second, but first I mentioned the Bucs will be out at their training facility, and it's time for the rookies to do their thing. And I've always thought that rookie mini camps serve really very little purpose except it's a cattle call, right? It's like, okay, what did I buy? Now you get to see what you purchased, All the guys show up that you drafted. There's 6 players, but you got to have about 40 something to have a meaningful practice of some kind. So you start signing all these undrafted free agents, and then you have some tryout guys on top of that. And some of the undrafted guys have a pretty good shot if you just look at how much money they were guaranteed here and there. But there's no question that in addition to Emeka Ibuka, you've got in all the draft picks, you've got some pretty interesting free agents undrafted, led by no other than Shiloh Sanders, who I don't know if you saw on the internet, the interweb, as the kids call it, the big moving van that was backed up to his home there in beautiful Boulder, Colorado, and he was getting ready to leave, and he's pretty jacked up about that, and started. It was like Instagram, I think, and started like Tampa, here I come. Well, here he comes.
But it's real interesting. You think about it though. He's an undrafted guy, so you've signed him. No guarantee he makes this team, and he's moving.
Yeah,
I mean, some guys would just you come down and stay for a little bit, not necessarily move.
maybe.
It is interesting. I mean, and who knows what conversations have been had and whatever else, but
Well, who knows what kind of
it's always tough. It's always tough for those guys. Like, there's no guarantee you're making a team,
right?
but you probably want to come here and practice and be with the guys throughout the summer, trying to help improve your chances to make the team.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy life and choice, and
no, but my guess is, and I don't know what his lease was at the Boulder estate, but let's face it, these guys get plenty of NIL money, and they've got Deion Sanders as their father. In a worst case scenario where he gets cut or released, he's not going to live in Boulder, right? Like that's not going to happen regardless. So, these kids were from Florida primarily, at least Deion was, and
good point.
They've lived everywhere, but for a while, Shiloh was at South Carolina his first couple of years. And the thing about it is that Sanders is going to get all the attention the first day. I'm just telling you, and I'm not apologizing for it. I mean, his brother was the story of the draft, and Shiloh didn't get drafted, and I'm sure he has an opinion on what happened and all of that. But Todd Bowles has gone around saying he wants ball hawks and wants ball hawks. Well, Sanders had 1 interception in 34 games at South Carolina and Colorado, just 1. And for a safety, that's not good enough. But he did force 5 fumbles, so he did get the ball out. But I just think they're thin at the position. Jordan Whitehead's not back. We'll see what Antoine Winfield Jr.'s. Hopefully he's going to be healthy, but nobody knows exactly how healthy he'll be. But I think
he's got a decent shot to make the roster.
Yeah.
Or worst case, he'll be on the practice squad.
He'll be on the practice squad, yeah. That's kind of how I feel about it.
If someone else doesn't sign him to a roster spot, assuming he doesn't make it.
But, and I don't know that this matters. And I don't know, because I've never met the kid. I don't know the first thing about him. But he is a Sanders. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there will be, this is a pretty delicate team that we're talking about here in terms of its chemistry. Like, these guys all really get along. It's a good locker room, and they welcome everybody that comes over. But I do wonder if, if he just won't take a little too much oxygen out of the room just because he's a Sanders, and I don't know that he's necessarily, bombastic, or I've never met the guy. I really don't know. But just watching him, he has the mannerisms, and he's going to be a good talker, and people are going to want to interview him and, ask him about Shador and all that. And, do other players start to look at this guy? In other words, is everybody going to accept him for, having a more famous brother? Or are they going to accept him as Shador, the safety that'll keep his nose clean help them on special teams and be a backup and that sort of thing. But when you get a lot of attention and you're not drafted, and I don't think they have a ton of guaranteed money into him necessarily. So that, like some other players that they sign. So he really is just a look-see, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But at a position, he's smart coming here because it's a position that they need, that they did not address. And I think because of that and special teams, he has a chance. There are some other guys, though, that have a better chance. And one of them is a tremendous story. One of the best stories, I think, in the draft, although he wasn't drafted, is this tackle from Georgia State, Ben Chukwuma. I hope I'm saying that right. Chukwuma, Chukwuma. This dude played soccer and basketball, okay, until like his last 2 years at Georgia State. He went to an open tryout for 40 walk-ons in 2020 and never having played football. And, he moved from Nigeria when he was 17. He, like I said, he played soccer and basketball. But dude was like 6'6", 240 at the time. And he tried out as like an outside linebacker, edge rusher kind of guy. But early on, some of the coaches said, he's got the ability, if he fills out, to be like a Pro Bowl tackle. So that's what he became, a tackle. And he only played 23 games in his life, right? But the tape is good enough. The Bucs guaranteed the guy $300,000. That's the most of any undrafted free agent of any team this year. $300K to come to camp. So he obviously had a market for himself, But again, the tackle position is one that behind, Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke, you lost Justin Scully to the Vikings as a free agent. You got Charlie Heck coming in here. I don't know that he's as good. I suspect he's not. But you could definitely use, some depth there, and that's why I think this kid is going to be an interesting guy, even though he played, at the small college level, obviously at Georgia State. There, of course, we talked about Desmond Watson and his, huge girth and how he's lost, I think, already like 20 or 30 pounds before since his pro day. But he'll be one that we'll be watching as well. A guy that I'm going to keep my eye on because some people in the front office said to is this linebacker from Nebraska, John Bullock, Bullock. And because they didn't address the position, I mean, Levante David's back on a 1-year deal. He's 35, right? Yeah, he led the team in tackles and he had 5.5 sacks and all that. But can he really consistently make splash plays? And Servassier Dennis, for all the promise he showed for 4 weeks last year, had to have his shoulder operated on. I don't think it'll cause him any more deals, but, he just hadn't played a ton of football. His reputation is really good, but I don't know where they're getting it because he hadn't been on the field a whole lot. And then they got, they couched it with Anthony Walker, who's a true pros pro, about 29 years old. So he gives them experience behind Britt. But this is a real opportunity, I think, for Bullock. And here he is coming in to learn from another Cornhusker in Levante David. What better situation could you walk into if you're an inside linebacker? I'm interested in some of the guys that I know aren't going to make it. Like Dino Tomlin has no chance. I'll just tell you right now. If you play receiver and you're undrafted, you're just hoping to get some tape. And I know Dino is Mike Tomlin's son, which is cool. But the last 3 years at Boston College, he didn't catch many passes. In his whole career, which began, I think, at maybe Maryland, he ended up with 40 receptions for 552 yards and 0 touchdowns. So he's 6 foot 188, but still an interesting guy, in terms of his pedigree and what his dad does and all of that. So I thought that was notable anyway, that, that he's here. But yeah, I mean, mini camps, it's shorts and t-shirts. It's, guys running around in underwear. You can't really tell if a guy can tackle or not tackle or any of that sort of thing. But it's a necessary step to training camp. It's a necessary step. And then you're going to have OTAs they've already begun like phase 2. They're on the field for a limited amount of time. And then before you know it, it'll be mandatory minicamp in June, middle of June, June 13th, and then boom, they're done. And they're done till, they report to camp sometime in late August, August 20 something. So we're almost, getting into the meat of the off season. The schedule comes out May 14th, and that's going to be, one of our better shows where we just decide how many games are going to win, all of them, and how they line up. But the NFL is still
We
cranking
don't do that.
along,
John
man.
Gruden does it for us, but
Yes, he does. Yeah, he does. And John, it was great seeing him the other day. I mentioned him on the chalkboard. Wasn't just doing spider 2Y banana, man. He was doing all kinds of things.
yeah, we got lots of great comments on that too, by the way.
I heard that they like, these listeners. I love them.
You freaking people know.
Hey, get your own podcast.
Hey, nah.
A little bit. They like to go down misery lane. They really like the trips down misery lane. But there's a whole lot of insight to it.
It's easier to go down misery lane when you've won a couple Super Bowls.
True.
Since. I mean,
it's true.
It helps.
Yeah, it's fun. And there's always stories that you haven't told that you can go back and retell or tell for the first time, because many of the people are no longer with us, or, the statute of limitations has passed, and you just feel, more forthright to tell kind of what happened. But those, Dungy and them told great stories over there the other day. John was great on the board. These coaches that have come in here for this academy have really had a great week. And, some of them, you think about the application process, they get over 1,000 people wanting to come to this thing. And you got to submit like a video in the end. If you get to a certain level, they'll ask you for a videotape of sort of why you want to do it. And then a lot of the front office personnel are the ones that review that. And they've got, international people. There's a woman from Germany that is essentially a broadcaster now, but she played American football, and so did her partner at one point. And in fact, she called the game that the Bucs had in Munich. And so she's here. There was another elementary school phys ed coach who coaches high school football 40 minutes away. Talked to him a little bit, and then a former player, Robert Ayers, who played 10 years in the NFL. Like, why would Robert Ayers, who was a assistant defensive line coach at Tennessee, wants to get in the NFL and found this to be a good pathway to come here and, and work minicamp. So, it's been a good, solid week. And last year they placed, I think, one individual with the Carolina Panthers, one woman that went to work for them. And I think it'll catch on. I think it's an idea that more teams should probably do. It's kind of done in conjunction with the Bill Walsh Foundation type stuff, but it's not all minorities. It's a good cross section of coaches, but they're all very engaged, and they're spend a lot of time with the assistants, which is a busy week for them with the minicamp coming up. But those guys are all gracious with their time, and I don't know, it just all kind of works there. I was talking to a bunch of them today, and they just, you take for granted, at least I do, that I've been inside an NFL facility. I've covered these great coaches and men that have played in the National Football League, and then here comes somebody who dreams about standing on the sidelines in an NFL stadium, and it's all just fresh new perspective that they've never had, and they're getting inside the building and next to these great minds and people they see at the highest level on TV every day. And they're like, it's cool. It's like, yeah, they got a family, wife and kids and problems and everything else, just like me. But they love this crazy game called football, and they learn an awful lot. So good for Darcy Glazer and them for kind of keeping this thing going. They made a lot of changes. I think after the first year, they wanted them to have more time with the coaches in particular. And they're all sort of assigned a certain assistant. Some are, doing special teams with Keith Tandy and that sort of thing. And then some are doing, offensive line. And so they're with position groups, but, there's still like all the meetings, the install, they get a pretty good sample of what the day is like. And now they get, for this week, the weekend anyway, they get to coach and actually be on the grass and instruct some of these rookies, which is really cool. So it's been fun watching it. I'm looking forward to camp too. It's not it's not going to be training camp weather, thank God. It's getting warmer, but it's not like walking on the sun there yet. But for a lot of these guys that come from places like Colorado, although Shiloh's certainly played in the South before, but it's a lot more humid than they remember, and so it's like their first introduction to it. But it's nothing like it's going to be in August. Like, you can't really even fathom just how wet it is and just how hot it is and how much fluids you lose and all of that. But this will give them a little bit of a baptism anyway, so it'll be good. All right, we got some mailbags questions before we get out. Let's go.
Anthony had emailed you. He says, would you prefer Bucs' new offensive coordinator, Josh Grizzard, to be on the sidelines or in the press box for the season? With a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, I personally feel he should be on the sidelines. Thank you for all you do.
You're welcome for that. My personal opinion is I don't give a damn. I mean, I think if you're him, you'd probably want to be wherever you're most comfortable. And I know he, as a third down specialist, I think he was in the press box a year ago. Probably more often than not, he's been up there.
Well, but that may have been just a factor of
that was
Liam
his job.
Cohen was on the sideline, so you put Grizzard upstairs too.
Right.
I mean,
your job. Certain people are assigned. Hey, what's the personnel groupings?
Yep.
Everybody has a job from the eye in the sky. But if it were me, I would conduct training camp from the sideline, and I would get used to, seeing things or having people tell me, who's in the game. Are they going nickel here? Are they, what are they, what's their personnel? And trying to call it, because I don't want to wait until the quarterback comes off the field, sits down, looks at the clipboard or the iPad, and then I have to get him on the phone. Like I want instant access to that guy. I want to know what he's seeing. I want to know what happened on the play, and I want us to fix it, and I want us to do it right there. And I just think you're adding a layer of communication. It just seems it would foster more trust if the guy who's in your ear is also on the sideline, because he's talking to you, through the headset, and the communicator that's in your helmet. So if it were me, I'd rather be able to go over there and just, grab the guy and say, what the hell were you thinking?
I agree with
you. See?
But if Grizzard's always been in the press box and that's what he's comfortable with,
well, yeah,
and if that's where he feels he could call plays better, then I'm kind of like you. Like, I think I would prefer it on the sidelines, or I would, but depending what his vantage point has been his career and what he's comfortable and used to, it may work for him that way.
It might.
I think it's whatever he and Baker Mayfield really and the rest of the offensive staff feel will work best, then you kind of have to trust them in that regard.
I think and I don't have any data, but I think the largest percentage of play callers are on the field.
Yep.
I think that's the way it goes. And there's probably a few that aren't, but it just makes a lot of sense to be down there. But hey, to each his own. I mean, the first thing is he's got to call a play. He's never done that. And he's got to have a lot of call-up periods in practice with top bulls, throwing the kitchen sink at him. There was one coach, Jeff Janikowski, who they hired when Raheem Morris first got the job in 2009. And they decided, Mark Dominic decided, I'm going to hire both coordinators. And I'm not going to let Raheem do it. I'm going to do it. So he hired Janikowski, who had been at Boston College as a head coach. Only problem is that no one told the Bucs, in particular Dominic, that he didn't call plays. He had his running backs coach do that. And so they hired him as offensive coordinator, and he decided to install like a zone blocking scheme, like was popular in Atlanta at the time and Denver and some places. And so they put him in here, and he spent a good part of the offseason, working on those steps with the offensive line, the running backs, one step and cut and all that. But I noticed on the field, like, he had the communicator, but then all of a sudden he didn't. And they would have one night practice at Raymond James, and they used to invite the masses, right? If you hadn't seen training camp, you go to this practice. So there's a lot of people there. And I look, and he's not on the field. Well, he was in the press box. And the reason he was in the press box, it turned out it was one last chance to see if he could do it. Like, if he knew what he was doing, if he wasn't in panic mode. He got real had a legit anxiety issue with calling plays, and the volume of his playbook just wasn't up to NFL level. There just wasn't enough there, as a virtual pamphlet compared to a book. And they determined 10 days. Can you imagine this? 10 days before the season opener, you put an install all the way since March, and you're 10 days from opening the season in September. They fired the offensive coordinator, and they made Greg Olson the quarterback's coach coordinator. It was too late for him to really change the system, so he had to live with it. And then before the season was over, Raheem Morris had his defensive coordinator fired as well, Jim Bates. And that was, I think, 10 weeks into the season, and Raheem took it over. So you imagine you're a young coach, you're 37 years old, whatever he was. They hire both your coordinators, and they fire both your coordinators within a year, and the first guy is gone in 10 weeks. That's not a recipe for success. And neither did they have any, because it was a horrific year. But yeah, so my point of this is, you don't know if you haven't called them. You don't know how a guy's going to react under pressure, in stress. And so in as much as they can put him in those situations with the call-it periods, and maybe even in the stadium, maybe even, if he's tinkering with going upstairs, let him go upstairs. Have a dry run, That stuff's valuable. So that might be what they do.
All right, CG had emailed you. He says, Rick and Steve, long time, first time here. With the recent news that the Panthers have moved on from Jadeveon Clowney, do you think the Bucs would have any interest in signing him? I'm not sure he's ever lived up to his pre-draft hype or how much interest he will garner from other teams. If not, do you feel the Bucs have adequately improved their pass rush?
CG, is this CG14 or CG12?
It is not. It is not. It's his initials, actually.
Yeah. No, Chris's initials too.
That's true.
We just don't know. With respect to Clowney, look, I don't know what he has in the tank, but I do know that these guys are not where they need to be in the pass rush, especially from the outside position. Look, they're counting on Yaya Diaby having a bounce back year. He had 7.5 sacks 2 years ago. Last year, fell to 4.5. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is gone. He's in Cleveland now. So you've got Hassan Reddick coming off the edge, and, when healthy and playing a lot of games, the dude was averaging over 10 sacks a game for about 5 years, or 10 sacks a season. So those are your starters. Okay, after that, you got your Anthony Nelson, who's, been around for a while, gets you 4 or 5 a year off the bench, pretty productive for the number of reps. And then there's Chris Braswell. And the biggest thing that has to happen is that Braswell needs to make a giant leap forward. And I don't know that he will. First of all, he needs to get in the weight room, because I think he was, getting handled a little bit. He seemed a little slight at times, rushing. But if he can bounce back, I think they would be okay. But I don't know. You got to show me, because the 1.5 sack that he got last year didn't really convince me of anything. So if he plays better, he played better down the stretch. There was a stat that said he had an 18% pressure rate from week 14 until the playoffs. So that's a little better. He got better as the year went on. He ended up with 1.5 sacks, but the pressure rate was there. And that's really the guy. That's, of all the guys, that's the one that has to really step forward. I think Reddick will be good because he'll be motivated, and that's going to help Yaya Diaby as far as the chipping and, extra tight ends in and stuff like that. It takes 5 to rush, and they should get those quarterbacks should be spilling out to them on the edge, because they got such pressure inside with Cansey and Vita Vea. I don't know how that hasn't worked to their favor. But this is the year that he's got to be able to rush 4 at times and get home. And, it's interesting. There's some guys out there. Of course, everybody talks about Shaq Barrett, right? Shaq came late last season and played the final game or two. Didn't really do much. He hadn't had the benefit of an off season. I don't know where he sits right now in terms of wanting to play or needing to play or anything like that. There was some news on TMZ the other day. Jason Pierre-Paul, all 3 of them, Jason, Pierre, and Paul.
JPP, me?
Yeah, you know me. He wants to come back and play in the NFL. and he hasn't played since 2023.
Well, he's well rested.
Well rested. He played for a couple teams that year. I think it was Miami and Baltimore. He's down to like 270, he said, and he's got a six-pack of abs, not beer. He's got a six-pack. But like this is a guy, though, that, had all kinds of health issues off the field. A couple of car accidents, one car accident that hurt his neck, fractured his neck, as a matter of fact. And then, of course, the fireworks accident that he lost several fingers in. But he still thinks he has something left. I'm skeptical of that. But, maybe somebody brings him in. I tend to think they won't at his age. The one thing I'll say about JPP, though, and it was underrated, was he was that guy that was scary quiet until he wasn't. And, like, when he spoke, guys were nervous, right? You always need that guy like a Hardy Nickerson or somebody that every once in a while he may split your wig. He may just swing a helmet and crack it. And JPP was like that. He did not suffer fools, man. He was a gamer, didn't say a lot, but boy, when he got frustrated, everybody was miserable. And I thought that was leadership on his part that he was like that. They would have never won a Super Bowl without him, I don't think. And, of course, him and Shaq Barrett were a great team together for a long time. And now they're both kind of on the outside looking in and kind of wanting to play. But, you don't really sign many 34-year-old edge rushers.
We'll get one Ray's question in here. Les had tweeted, with the slow start and the impending large contract on the horizon for Shane McClanahan, he's arbitration eligible for 2 years, then an unrestricted free agent. Should the Rays trade him now so they don't risk him getting injured and lose any trade value?
Possibly. You know what? And there's no way around this. Remember when they traded Tyler Glasnow and everybody was losing their minds?
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so, because he's a really good pitcher and he was doing well again. Well, he's hurt. He's with the Dodgers and he's down again. And I kind of think McClanahan, who's already had 2 Tommy Johns, is sort of the same way. Like when he gets back out there and he starts trying to pump it up there at 98, 99, or 100, something's going to snap. Something's going to go wrong. And if he had value and you could get value for him, I would say yes, because it's not the pitching that's getting them beat right now. They're pitching pretty well, and they haven't had McClanahan. Then they'd be better with him if he was healthy. But he hasn't been healthy in a while. So are you just hoping that, the worm turns and suddenly he can be Shane McClanahan again? And for how long? Because it seems like when he's out there working, that's when things break down. So I'd be personally inclined to say, let's see if we can get something for you. This isn't Blake Snell necessarily, that blew up in their face. This is a guy that's had a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm. I think his value goes up, though, if he pitches the back half of this season and pitches well. It
does. But you how many games? Every time you run him out there, something could pop. So, but you definitely would increase his value if he could show that he's back, because he never really truly had a chance to do that. But what are they saying with him? Is there any update? Is he like June or?
I've heard so many different things. I don't think he's throwing yet.
No, I don't think he is either. I don't think he's either. He took a line drive that Schwabe hit off of him the other night.
If he's not throwing yet, that's going to take at least a month of ramping up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be
he's
a minute.
Not a reliever who just needs to go an inning or two at a time.
Right. The word is that Josh Lowe is close to coming back.
He's on a rehab assignment.
Yeah, that's cool. Definitely could use him.
Yes.
Got hurt after the first game, I believe. And
they could use that bat for sure.
Oh yeah, left-handed bat, that ballpark. Another outfielder they've been decimated. I think they've used 5 or 6 outfielders this year.
Oh, at least. Their starting 3 are on the IL.
Right.
Palacios, DeLuca, and Lau.
And now your backups are on the IL.
Yep. Yeah. And now you got Mangum's on the IL, and
right.
You got Simpson up here, and you've got Morel playing the outfield, and
right. Well, that's a mess.
Meisner's. He's in a slump.
He went from 400 to no 100 in a hurry.
Yep.
So, yeah, they need some bats, and they need them quick, and they need to figure out a way to win at Steinbrenner, man. But they're not going to have many games there when it turns on them, when it starts getting hot and humid and raining, is they're going to be on the road an awful lot. And maybe that's better for them in some ways, but I would not have predicted that playing outdoors at Steinbrenner would be a bad thing for them. I thought they'd be energized by it. I thought it would be good for their club. And it turns out it's just the opposite. It's a house of horrors for them. They do not feel at home. And now, the more you lose, the more it's in your head. It's like, oh, God, we got to go out here at Steinbrenner and try to win a game. And it becomes a thing when it shouldn't be a thing at all. But I think it's starting to get that way with them. I don't know. Curious. Anyway, I'll be out at $1 Place to watch the minicamp. Check it out, Tampa Bay Times, tampabay.com. Also, make sure you go see our friends, Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the NFL collection of watches, the 104th year anniversary, 32 team watches while supplies last. And also, they have watches for your wife, your girlfriend. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure you let them know you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times. Have a great weekend, everybody.